I was betrayed by my wife even after 3 years of marriage. I was not hoping for such an outcome. After all what I have done for her, it was totally unexpected for her to cheat me in such a way. She was everything to me, my world and the apple of my eyes. I still feel very gloomy when I think about what had happened behind my back. If I had not found it out, it might have still been going. It all started 3 years back when I graduated from carpentry school, and woodworking was my first love, as I always wanted to be a sculptor and make the finest art pieces. After graduation, I joined one of the top companies which made wooden handicrafts. In the day, I used to work in the workshop, and in the evenings, I worked in another showroom where I used to make tables. That's where I met Sarah. She was our product manager and a very shrewd business lady. It just took us a couple of weeks to get very close, as we used to work together and for long hours. We became very good friends, and within no time, we became lovers and got married right after 2 months. She had a very charming personality, and it was so much fun to be around her, as they used to work together, and now we were living together as well. She was my best friend and my most favorite person in the world. I regularly used to buy her flowers and chocolates. Things started to become complicated between us, as she was a manager and was also over-friendly with other employees. At first, I protested little, but it became as usual thing, so I basically got over it. Since it was her habit to maintain and manage the company, I understood her position and the nature of professional relationships. Soon, she got pregnant and we had our first baby boy. It was the happiest moment of my life and we were so grateful. But the strange thing was that the boy had Chinese eyes. Since we both were now native, having a baby with Chinese eyes was a bit unexpected. Yet I did not give it much of a thought. Conflict started to rise as we were both very serious about growing our child, and I was very careful to not give him any inorganic material, while she, being a working woman, was not much concerned about it, and we started to have minor disagreements over how to feed the child and how to take care of him, and I really wanted to avoid market stuff, and I really wanted to provide him all the natural things possible. Every relationship has its ups and downs, and it takes us quite some time to understand the other person and to learn their habits and how they see the world from their own eyes. Being an empathetic person is something that really helps us understand the other person's perspective. Our life took a drastic turn when she decided on her own that she wanted to leave job just to be a full-time mom. It was pretty unexpected, and I was quite taken back by this sudden decision. Our expenses were getting increased, while now she wanted to be home mom, and it would become soon pretty hard for us to sustain our lifestyle because I was to be the only source of income. I agreed to it because I really wanted her to be comfortable around the baby, so I started to do double shifts, and now she was a homebody. As the inflation started to rise due to recent elections, we were under a huge burden due to our house mortgage and all the expenses. Just after a week, she came up with a solution. She wanted to be a showroom manager in nearby Chinatown, but I was not too happy about it. Still, it was getting hard for us to manage all the expenses, so I suggested she move to a more affordable housing society, but she took a stand there and was pretty uncomfortable to move around. She was very strongly insisting to remain there. It was difficult for me to understand, since it was in favor of us both to live in an affordable society, as we had a child now. Days started to move pretty quickly as I was doing double shifts and she was also going to showroom. There was something pretty off about her behavior that I was unable to pinpoint, as it was not pretty obvious. But she was getting less communicative by each passing day and was not very responsive apart from day-to-day responsibilities, as we were having little to no conversations with each other at all. I tried to talk to her to give me more time, or if there is anything wrong that I have been doing, so that I can rectify my behavior. Yet there was nothing specific that she mentioned apart from general behavioral changes. So after getting so much frustration, I requested her to join me in couples therapy, so that we can work on our relationship and start where we left it off. to which she replied that she was not interested in it. Couple of days later, my stepfather called me and asked me how my life was going. Me and my stepdad were not on very good terms from the very start, and we had our differences. Still, we cared for each other, so I replied in the most general way that everything has been going fine, and since our baby life has been pretty great. Yet he asked about how Sarah and your relationship is going. This was a pretty out-of-the-blue question, as this had never been discussed between us before, to which I obviously replied that things have never been so great. He said he has seen Sarah in Chinatown with a Chinese boy. This has been pretty unusual, as they were sitting pretty close to each other, to which I replied that I already know that she had been working in a showroom in Chinatown. And I shrugged it off and was not very concerned about the tone of my dad, so I requested him not to worry about this matter. She is a professional and knows her way around the society. Our relationship took another serious turn when a very close friend of mine saw my wife with a Chinese boy roaming around the city and shopping, as he told me that it was something now that I just could not ignore because it had been happening a second time now. So I started to think about finding the backstory behind it. One day while she was on job, I planned to follow her, so I sat in my car and waited for her to come out of a showroom, and to my doubt, she was actually with a Chinese boy. They went out to a really nice park and sat there for like 2 hours. This was not something that sat well with me, so I took a couple of their pictures and came back, and as she came home, I showed them to her and asked her about the story behind it. She was pretty angry about this whole thing, but realizing her mistakes, apologized to me and said she just wanted someone to talk to, that's why she's been hanging out with him. I asked her not to make this mistake again, and she promised that this was the last time. But then again one day my friend called me and told me that he had seen her with the same boy, this time coming out of my home, as I was at work. So this made me pretty furious, because now my doubts were getting pretty clear, so I planned to confirm it. So I installed a CCTV camera in my bedroom to track and monitor the activities. Now the most strange thing happened as I was going through the CCTV videos. I saw my stepdad standing there in front of my wife. They both were arguing and what seemed to be a very heated conversation, as I was not able to make any sense. So I waited for a couple of days so I might get some clarity. It was already pretty odd, as I have never seen them both before having any sort of conversation. Now this was very worrisome to see him standing in the bedroom and having a debate over something. So after a couple of days I called my stepdad and requested him to meet me. As we sat in a cafeteria, I showed him a CCTV video and asked him what had been happening. He was pretty sad, and for what seemed like eternity, there was a pause, and then he told me that I wanted to tell you something earlier, but it was something that was not easy for me. So now that you have found out yourself, it's better that I tell you now. But before I do, be aware that it might be something that will change your life forever. Now my anticipation was even higher than before, so I was eagerly waiting for him to say something. He drew out a cold breath and told me that I am not the father of the child. This was whole earth-shattering news for me. I accused my stepdad of being jealous about it. He said, trust me, this was not an easy thing to tell. Yet, it is true, you haven't noticed the boy has Chinese eyes, and your wife has been seen with this Chinese boy multiple times, and even she had left his job just to be in Chinatown. Trust me, my boy, this was all not a coincidence, and something like that had been happening for a while. Before I got more angry, I requested him to tell me how he knew all this. He said that having a moving company, he had seen her many times with the same boy as he used to go through Chinatown, and after seeing the child, he just deduced that. So he went home and confronted her to tell him the truth. At first, she avoided me. Then she asked me not to tell her this. This really broke my heart. But just to confirm it, On the very next day, I went to the doctor and did the DNA test, and to clear my doubt, it was all true. The boy was definitely not mine, so I planned to give my wife a surprise on her birthday. I invited the Chinese boy, and as they cut the cake, I gave her those papers as a departing gift and handed over that Chinese boy his parenting papers and requested them not to come back ever again, or I'll file a lawsuit against them. This was a very head-turning moment for everyone around the room, but she knew and the boy knew what had been the reality all along. So, after getting such shocking news, they quietly left the venue and I never saw them again. Now I live a peaceful life, working on my craft.